Hello and welcome. So today I'm going to do a game review. I had a request by Dave, a member of the local chess club. He wanted to see some older games from our club and from different club members being reviewed. So of course I only have games where I played against those club members. So I'm going to review one against Dave that we actually played in a tournament in 2021. I think it was December of 2021. And let's see, I had the white pieces. I was rated 1605 at the time, and Dave was rated 1818. And I think we had about game in 50 with a delay of 5. And, I always have issues, not always, but often I have issues with time. So I think I got in time trouble in this one, and the game took a turn for the worse. So let's see what happens, see what we can learn. All right, so I had the white pieces, and I begin with d4. And Dave, a solid player, responds with d5. So, and I figured, now heads up, I lose this game. He was rated 200 points higher than me. And I figured, if somebody requests that I go over some of these games, I can't show my wins only. I got to show some of the losses. And you can actually learn more from your losses as well. If you're winning all the time, you think, oh, I must be doing well. But, when you have a bad mistake, it definitely can be a learning experience. So let's see what we can learn in this game. So, I play knight to f3. He responds with knight to f6. So the game is even so far. We're just controlling the center with our knights, fortifying our pawns. And I continue with e3 with the Kali system. So you can play the Kali system with, the bishop here. Knight develops to d2 behind the bishop. And then you could push the c pawn here or to c4, or you could play the Zukertort Kali system where you push this pawn, fianchetto the bishop, aiming it at the king side here, which could come in handy later as the center opens up. So Dave just mimics my moves here. We're just both doing the same thing, playing solid and a little bit conservative maybe. And so now I develop the bishop. Here he varies the position, deciding to fianchetto his bishop, aiming down towards my king side. So I just go ahead and castle, getting my king to safety. He continues with his plan to fianchetto. At this point, white, we're still in book moves, and white has just a slight edge, having the first move. So here, this is a good move, but apparently c4 is better, to just go ahead and strike in the center immediately by pushing this flank pawn and attacking the valuable central pawn. But here, knight to e5 is a common move in this Kali system, where you bring the knight up here, you push your pawn to f4 to really secure that knight on the outpost. You can maybe bring your other knight up to f3 to back the first knight up. But this does waste a little bit of time. What does the computer say I should have done? Attacked in the center, or maybe develop another piece. So instead, my opponent, he strikes in the center immediately, wasting no time. So this is a good move, although the computer recommends this move here, bringing the knight in and immediately attacking my knight. So I ignore this pawn push, getting ready to fianchetto my own bishop, aiming towards Dave's king side. So, and this move also prevents this pawn push, because then I can capture, he captures, I capture. So the game continues with developing move. Apparently the best move in the position according to the computer. The game is almost even here, and I continue with f4. An excellent move according to the computer, but developing my other knight would have been better. So We have developing move by Dave. And if you notice, I only have, what, 2 pieces developed. I mean, I guess you could count my king castling and my rook, so maybe 3 developing moves. Whereas Dave is ahead right here with 4 pieces developed. I mean, maybe I could have captured, he captures, and then I develop another piece, but black is kind of ahead in the development race here. So I developed my bishop, the best move according to the computer, aiming up through the king side or through the center towards the king side. And Dave decides to keep developing with his queen. Now the queen will be lined up. If a rook gets in behind the queen, you have this battery aiming down the half open C file if there's an exchange here in the center. So I continue with this defensive move, keeping the knight from chasing my bishop, but this is probably a waste of time. It would have been better, according to the computer, to just develop the other knight. So now I'm kind of getting behind in development here. Dave is the first to strike in the center here, giving up his flank pawn for my more valuable central pawn. So after I capture, which this is the best move to capture with the pawn, now we have knight to e4 is preferred by the computer. But Dave castles. And now, apparently this move is the best. Castling the king to safety. The rooks are connected and they can jump into the game now. So I need to continue development. I bring my knight up, and then from here I can back my other knight up. So the game continues with Dave grabbing space on the queen side. Now I ignore that, developing my queen, which is the best move apparently. And so the game continues with knight retreating here, an excellent move, but the computer prefers just developing the other rook out of the corner towards this half-open C file. So what should be played here? I line my rook up on the queen, but apparently a4 would have been better, equalizing the space on the queen side. So here, the game is, slightly in white's favor at this point. Dave repositions his knight, putting a little bit more pressure on my knight, but I figure if it's captured, I can capture towards the center, chasing his bishop back. So what do I do here? And what would have been best? Well, once again, it looks like knight to e4 is preferred, but then, how would that play out? If they jump the knight up here and then they recommend capturing, let's see, with the pawn, or excuse me, make sure I'm looking at this correctly. So if we had knight to e4, they recommend that I capture knight, pawn captures, bishop captures, and then, I don't know, we would just trade some material there in the center and open things up. But instead, we have this repositioning move. So now, this is an inaccuracy. Apparently, a4 would have been better, keeping space even on the queen side. It would give an outpost, perhaps. Well, would it really? I mean, I guess I could push and chase that bishop out of there. So, an inaccuracy by me, kind of opening things up around my king. So probably not a good idea. So the game continues with knight repositioning here, putting more pressure on my knight. But, I can afford to ignore that, I guess. Looks like g5, gaining more space on the king side, might be a better move here. But I make the first mistake of the game. And, why did I make this move? I don't know what I was thinking here. I thought, maybe I would knock out a defender, but this gives up the bishop pair. Not a great move here. What should I have done instead? Apparently g5 would have been a better move. And then the recommendation is to counter with what? f5 here. So if that happens, well then what are we looking at? either knight takes, apparently that's best. Knight, they would kind of half open up the h-file, so that would have been a better way to go. But after this bad move, this mistake, now black is ahead, the equivalent of a pawn, even though material's even at this point. So capture, and wow, apparently it would have been better to capture the other way. So let's take a look at that. If you capture this way, it opens up the f-file for black's rooks, and then they recommend c4, bishop to a6, pinning that pawn to my queen. So what's best here? They recommend queen to g2, something like that. And then what? Capture. And here they recommend the knight capturing. And then, wow, then we have a lot of stuff happening. So some trades, bishop up to e7, knight up to d6 to the outpost, apparently, or knight to e3. But anyway, whatever would happen in these scenarios, it looks like black would be, having a comfortable advantage at this point. So instead, this was a missed opportunity. The game continued with capturing towards the center, which is generally, the best way to go when you're capturing with the pawns instead of capturing away from the center. So here the best thing is queen to g2. But instead, I bring the rook up, thinking that it would have more activity. I could go over here or go over here and attack the queen, perhaps. So g5 would have been a better move. Now black has a slight edge after that rook move. So we have a capture, recapture towards the center, chasing the bishop. The bishop drops back, and black has the edge here. So the best move apparently is what? h4? Giving up this pawn for some maybe activity down the open h-file. So queen steps over. This is an inaccuracy. Queen to e3 would have been better, apparently. So the game continues with g5. So what next? And bishop to a6. They like that a little bit better, putting that bishop on an open diagonal. So the game continues with, finally, I play this a4 move, equalizing space on the queen side, but now it's an inaccuracy once again. Queen to e3. They like that move better. All right, so the game continues with the f pawn being pushed. Now if I take, they can retake, get rid of their doubled pawns over here. So what did I play? Well, another mistake, attacking the queen. Apparently it would have been better to take that pawn on f6. All right, so queen is under attack. The queen sidesteps to d7, the best move in the position. And, at this point, I think I'm getting low on time, because I always did have a time issue, especially in games that were an hour and less. All right, so let's see here. Queen up to g3, an inaccuracy. Once again, they want me to capture here. So the bishop grabs the open diagonal, but bishop to b4 would have been better, attacking the rook and knight. So knight jumps forward, developing. We have the king stepping forward. The first mistake by black here, and apparently the advantage has shifted in my favor, but I wasn't able to take advantage of it. It looks like, in the game, I played the best move, so I grabbed the advantage for a short period, but after recapture, and they don't like that. Apparently bishop to d6 attacking the queen first would have been better. So here, the best move would have been that. I should have attacked the queen, grabbing, placing a rook on the 7th rank. Maybe I was afraid of this bishop move being able to fork my queen and the rook. But, it would take a while to set that up. So, let's see. I play this blunder move, and this was a time trouble move. I was kind of in a hurry, getting low on time, and I just forgot about the bishop off on the edge of the board. So a blunder. Now let's see what I should have done. Apparently, if I attack the queen like this, the best move is moving back to d8. Now you have this threat of forking these two pieces. So bishop, oh wow, bishop to a3. So a good move there. They recommend protecting the bishop. And now h4 or knight takes g5 could be played. Which would open things up. But maybe this is a little bit safer, playing h4. And then after capture, queen captures. Now there's some threats against the king. So what do they recommend here? King up to g8. Queen. Oh, we have to drop back. Let's go back on this. So, oh wow. Yeah, no wonder that move would be hard to see, because if I take, now they're saying queen to h2 would have been better, because what happens if they capture here? Well, then you have check, king up to f8, queen to h8, or knight to e5. Wow, I don't know, this is some crazy stuff. They're saying knight up to e5. So if they take, there's a mate here, because it would open the file up for the rook. All right, so yeah, a lot of possibilities here. I'm not going to dig too much deeper into that. So, this is where I went wrong here. I could have had an attack on the king, but I allowed my rook to be captured. So after king captures, apparently rook to c7 would have been a little bit better, but still not enough. And that's a mistake. So rook to c7 would have been better. At least I would get some kind of attack going. After that move, king would have to take, or a3. But then they have rook defends, knight takes g5 check, take, and I'm running out of attack possibilities here. So queen up to e5. We have this move. And then what? Rook to b7. I just don't have enough material to keep the attack going, it looks like. All right. In the game, I just go behind in material. So Dave is up by +2. Now my queen is under attack. So now I take here, but it's, that move is no good. Queen to g2 would have been better. And I think I'm about running out of time at this point. So king steps over. And I guess this is where the game ended. I think I was just out of time, or I resigned at this point. So, good game by Dave. What can we learn? Well, don't give up your bishop pair unless you have a good reason to. And I don't know, another good thing to learn is watch out for bishops on the other side of the board, off on the edge. I always remembered a famous grandmaster was asked, he moved his bishop and he had the option of placing it somewhere like B7 or A6. And he put it on A6 and they said, well, what made you move it there? And he said, well, it was further to the side of the board, and I thought maybe my opponent would overlook it later in the game. And sure enough, that's what happened. The opponent kind of overlooked that bishop all the way on the other side of the board, aiming across the board, and something similar to what I just did happened where, you move and it snatched up my rook. All right, well, feel free to leave comments. Leave requests in your comments if there's something specific you would like to see in future videos. Like and subscribe to support the channel if you haven't already. Thank you for watching and have a super chess day.